Okay, so we're here with Tom Waldron, and we were just talking about where we are in the world, and you are in the UK. What part exactly?
Yeah, I'm in Portsmouth. So Portsmouth is like a old naval town. It's basically, if you know what England looks like, I'm literally at the bottom.
Okay.
So I'm like an hour south from London.
Okay.
If people know where London is. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit about how, like, growing up, how you got into Pilates. You teach Pilates, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you, just to give a little background, I found you on Instagram, and your posts were very thought-provoking and really stood against the status quo. Maybe not against is a good word. It just they bring up valid questions that more of us need to be asking about the way that we were taught in general about specific muscles versus moving the whole body. So and then I've taken several of your webinars, which you usually do on Saturday morning for you. So it's usually, what time do you usually do them?
It's normally at 10 a.m. in the UK.
Okay, so that would be 2 a.m. for me. So so I'm usually not, I don't get to be there live, but I'm thank you for allowing them to play longer. I was having such a hard time getting them all in, like your hip one, I'm still going through. And this morning I was just doing one of the muscle energy techniques, pushing, and I've got something going on with my left hip, and it actually felt so much better just doing it.
Amazing.
Anyway, okay, so I want to hear about you, how where you grew up, how you got into movement, and your passion now for what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is my hometown. Portsmouth is my hometown. I've done a fair bit of traveling, I guess, the last 8 years, but yeah, I mean, like, I've never been the most physically gifted person. I'm not particularly coordinated or have. It's funny. I actually come from a family of dancers. So I have two older sisters. My mum was a dancer, and then one of my sisters was a Royal Ballet dancer in London. So it's in my genes, but I just didn't inherit the flexible, coordination genes. So I really got into sports and skateboarding and a bit of surfing. So there's surf around the UK in different areas. So I always was into that stuff really, and was never really into anatomy. Never had much of an interest in school. I always thought biology and physics was cool, but it was never like a thing that I thought I'd study more extensively later. And so yeah, and I kind of like, I guess, you grow up and you do stuff, and I was, like a lot of people, I had a bunch of pains in my body. I thought I was too young to have pains in my body. I was probably about 19, 21, something like that. And I had like just the classic, like if I stood too long, I had knee pain, or, I'd have back pain quite regularly. I had a shoulder issue for years. And I just kind of, I just by circumstance, really, I started to hang around a bunch of people that were talking about biomechanics. And it was very much talking about, you can do exercises, but also it's how you're moving in the rest of your life that can really affect how you feel. So that kind of led me into doing Pilates. I did a Pilates training, a really good Pilates training actually years ago, with my other sister, Emma. And I was lucky enough at the time, my other sister, she has a studio, and she was kind of super tired of running the studio. She was being a one-man show basically. And me being like super, like no experience, didn't know any anatomy, just did my Pilates, so I knew some movements and I was really into it. I just started teaching all these classes suddenly, and it was I loved it. It was so fun. I was always quite nervous talking to people. Like, I guess I always think even a Pilates class is public speaking. You have to be in front of people and talk, and so it was really fun to like humbly start just like playing with movement, and me not even being particularly a good mover, like learning as I was going along. And I remember my sister basically said, why don't you try this thing called Franklin method? So what my main thing I teach these days is Franklin method, especially with Pilates too. And I had no idea what that was. I knew a bit about biomechanics. I'd been to physical therapy school, so I'd done a little bit of that stuff. And then I went to Paris for a bit and studied under Eric Franklin and Morten Demir, who are the kind of the top Franklin method guys. and really fell in love with this idea of like imagery, so mental imagery. So, you know, how can we use the mind in a really evidence-based way to help improve either movement or improve how you feel, and how can we ground that in the science of like biomechanics or biotensegrity or evolution. So, and then I ended up doing all the other levels later in America and stuff. So yeah, I've kind of like, I guess for me, like it feels really varied what I've done, but it wasn't intentional at all, if that makes sense. So I kind of got introduced to biomechanics initially, thought that was really interesting, like, you know, how the body moves and how bones might move and how do forces move through the body. And then that led me to a bit of physical therapy. And then that led me into the exercise world. And now I'm very much more, I guess, in the imagery world, but also relating it to things like, you know, biotensegrity or biomechanics, or certain parts of the body. So it's been a really cool journey, really. I feel like it's only been 8 years actually, so it's been quick as well. It's been, yeah, I guess like it's been fun because I kind of feel like I've been around the right people, and I think that's definitely a privilege my way. Like I've just kind of been around people who are really cool, like not many egos really, people that just want to share information and have a chat, and you know, it's like everyone's on the same level, if that makes sense. There's no hierarchy of, you know, you're not allowed to ask that question or you're not allowed to talk to that person. So you know what I mean? Like, so I've been around a lot of cool people basically in my time, which is nice.
Well, you have a very cool demeanor. You probably attract cool people and vice versa. So, well, that's wonderful. So what, are you like 30? How old are you?
I'm 30 now. I'm nearly 31.
30,
yeah.
You're a baby. Okay.
yeah.
That's so awesome.
I don't feel like I am, but I think I am. So yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Well, you're very mature and obviously very knowledgeable. And I love the way that you teach. It's just very straightforward. And yeah, it's just very refreshing. And of course, I love your accent is just so so that's always, you know, something nice and different. So the main thing I wanted to talk about today with you is, so I teach Pilates teachers how to teach pre and postnatal women. That is my sole focus. And, you know, kind of my bigger vision is that if I feel like if we can help more pre and postnatal women through Pilates, support them, not only is it wonderful for them, but they are literally raising our future leaders. And it just kind of, I have a social work background as well, and 2 adopted children. So I look at like culture and how many women, especially new moms, don't have the support that they really need to be able to be their best for their families. And so, you know, I'm kind of still working on creating this framework around how Pilates teachers can really help women beyond with movement, but really being aware of the emotional aspects of it. And that's what attracted me to your work is the idea of, well, the Franklin method is amazing. I've taken a few of his courses when he's been at like the Pilates Method Alliance training. Yeah, just, I mean, his stuff makes so much sense. And I wish more people would do it and knew about it. Actually, his book was one of the first books. I went through my training in 2002. And his book on the psoas, where he has now, I think it's his wife now, but she was a student at the time, and she was showing all the different movements in the book of the psoas using the TheraBand and all these beautiful drawn images of how to see it. And it was, I have a dance background as well, and was introduced through the university through being a dance major. And it just made so much sense. And then of course, when I found you know, almost 20 years later now, first of all, the name Fletcher obviously sparked my memory, but then your posts, what you post on Instagram is, and I think social media, there's so many beautiful things about it. Obviously, there's a lot that's not, but the fact that I could tap into, like, find you, tap into, and actually feel something from seeing an image that you post, or just a simple quote that you might put up there. That's the beauty of social media to me, is to be able to connect with people that way. So I'm so interested in your experience with working with, if you have a lot of it, or even a little bit of it, working with pre or postnatal women or postpartum women. And we're talking postpartum. Usually it's that first year to 2 years, that's kind of more vulnerable. But I think once a woman has had a cesarean birth, or, grown a baby in her womb, which is, let's just stop there for a second and look at how miraculous that is, right? Just kind of what your experience has been working with this population, and how you think, what you think you could bring to the table in helping teachers to be more confident and aware when working with this population, from your perspective.
Yeah, one thing, by the way, you just made me remember, I was thinking about this a while ago. I was thinking it's kind of crazy how, like, when a female's pregnant, like, you don't just like wake up one day and think, oh, I'm going to grow the eyes today, or I'm going to grow the arm. Like, it's just crazy how, like, there's so much intelligence going on that your body can do that while you feed and rest. And obviously you're doing other stuff too. But, it is really crazy that we can just, we can grow people. And it just kind of happens on a regular basis. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? But
and taken for granted many times.
I mean, I've got 2 sisters, and so one of them is pregnant right now with a little girl, and she's already got she's got a little boy who's 2, and then I've got 2 nieces too. So it's been really cool to, like, I've always been the baby of the family, really. So it's been quite nice now. There's like 3 of them running around. And it's just wild to see, like, them from like day one pretty much, and then just see them, like, their personalities and their movement patterns and how they relate to, just the world, really, isn't it? It's really, really cool. So it's been really interesting watching just people grow, literally, and seeing how their body changes too. Yeah. But I think for me, like, I'll relate to the pelvic floor, but one thing I've always really resonated with, and I think most people do really, is just the idea of clarity. So it's a little bit like, well, what am I doing, and what am I actually working with? So I really believe that, especially with the body, because it can be an area where there's not a lot of clarity, or there can be some beliefs that aren't true, or beliefs that aren't helpful for the professional, but also for the person they're working with. It's really getting clarity around, like, what are we doing? So I guess a great example would be with the pelvic floor. Like, what is the pelvic floor? Like, normally we have this perception of it being like, well, it's a floor of muscles. People can normally view it as like a 2D thing. It kind of goes from maybe the coccyx to the pubic bone. It does a few things. Apparently it's weak all the time. We've got to strengthen it. It's kind of like, there can be a lot of, I guess, kind of like very simple ways to view that area. And so one thing I do in the pelvic floor workshops, but also just one-to-ones, the first thing is just showing people a pelvis. Like, you have a pelvis, it's 4 bones, you have 5 inner joints, 5 outer joints. Like, how do those joints move, or where are those joints located? I think that's really huge, and kind of getting an appreciation for the pelvis is dynamic, but also the pelvic floor is really dynamic, and how you move those joints, how the sacroiliac moves, or how the hip joints move, or even how your lower back moves. That's going to influence the tone of the pelvic floor muscles, and it's also going to influence the tensile properties of the fascia around the pelvic floor. So without getting too intense with regards to anatomy, it's more about, like, well, can you have a sense of where is your pelvis relative to your legs, to your spine? Okay, cool. Where are your hip joints located? Like, something as simple as that, where people would think, oh, they're pointed here. And then I've noticed even professionals, they're pointing to their hip bones, or they're pointing to their thigh bones. And it's not really pointing at where does your femur head actually meet your acetabulum. And the reason why I guess I reference that with the pelvic floor is, we know that actually if you flex your hips and you're doing certain movements with your hip joints, that influences the tone of the floor. So probably if someone has a real kinesthetic sense of where their femurs actually relate to their hip joints, and then move from that perspective, I guess more mindfully, that's going to already start to help train the pelvic floor in a bit more of a conscious way, I suppose, especially for people who are injured, or if they've had any issues during their labor, which I know is really common. You know, I think a lot of the pelvic floor exercises are great. I just think, why not bring in the rest of the body? Why not talk about the whole pelvis, or also talk about how the feet influence the pelvis? So I suppose it's been a bit more dynamic, if that's not too abstract. But also, I mean, I guess one thing I'll add too is, like, I'm a really big fan of, like, you know, talk, not to be blindly positive, because that's also not beneficial to anyone. But basically, why not talk about how robust the body is as well? So we only ever talk about, you know, oh, I don't know, the perineal body's injured, or this muscle's not working, or this feels really tight. And that may be true, and we you know, we'll work on that. But if that's only our focus, so if someone's focus is always my pelvic floor is weak or my pelvic floor is tight, you know, you tend to get what you focus on, even if you're doing things to get away from that. So I think it's also just being aware of what that person's focusing on a daily basis, and not to be like blindly positive, like it's okay. Not that I don't think that's beneficial, but just to be more practical, I suppose.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So that just reminded me, that's another reason why I love your work, because you talk a lot about language, and I know how powerful language is when it comes to our feelings and what we're even able to do. Dr. Sinead Dufour, are you familiar with her?
I've heard of her. Yeah.
I think I tagged her like in one of your posts, so maybe that's why. But she actually does research on diastasis recti. And what she do another one on pelvic pain. And what they came up with, obviously, that you know about pain, is that when women saw their pelvis as weak, dysfunctional, they had more pain than the women who saw it as, you know, resilient, and kind of these more, like you said, not being like blind to it, but just looking at it with hope that there are things that we can do. And also, I was listening to a podcast. One of the things I do before I interview or talk to a guest is I try to find anything that you've done in the past. So I found a podcast you did in like 2018, and you were talking about, it was with a man and a woman.
I remember this one. I was in Dubai. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys were talking a lot about pain and how, you know, what we've been taught, like belly to spine, and, you know, that the transverse can help support the spine, and all of these things that we've been taught for so long, and that mechanics can help prevent pain or take pain away, which actually just really isn't the case. You know, that's where, again, language and thoughts and the way you look at things are just so valuable. And I really, you're doing such a great job of it, or such an inspiration in being able to get teachers to really start thinking down that path of and who said, Brent, I think it's Brent Anderson. Are you familiar? Polestar Pilates, Brent Anderson. So he has this, he said, he wrote a blog post about movement and like the person's experience. And he basically said that the person's movement experience is, as long as they're having a positive movement experience, it's so much more beneficial than whether their feet are right underneath their hips, or, you know, that alignment, basically. And I just love that, and really want to continue to push that. Again, not that we're ignoring, you know, like basic.
It's just both, isn't it? It's not either or. It's
there you go. Yes.
Like, it's just both. I think we get into this, like, not you at all, but I think in general people get into this, like, well, it's either say good things and don't worry about alignment, or worry about alignment and don't worry about what you say. It's kind of like, well, you just do both. Like, totally, because biomechanics is important. Like how you absorb and redistribute forces is really important. Right. But also, you know, the 60,000 and the 90,000 thoughts you have in your head every day, that's also really important. And it's just kind of both, isn't it? Like, you're a human being, aren't you? And one thing we talk a lot about in the Franklin method is, which I really resonate with, is like, you know, why not focus on what you do most of the time? And it's like, well, why would you want to do that? It's like, well, because you do it most of the time. And it's like, well, what do you do? Well, you breathe, you think, you're either sitting or standing, and you're relating to gravity in some way. So if we can optimize like those 4 or 5 things, that's already like a super cool foundation for when you do yoga or Pilates, or if you go see your physical therapist. So I think it's just kind of both, really. I think what happens is people become experts in certain areas, and they write these amazing books, or they do these really cool talks, and they go really deep down a rabbit hole and find a lot of gems there and really great advice. But then I think it's also then, like you say, kind of then coming back and then looking at, well, movement's important, posture's important, biomechanics is important, but also my thoughts, you know, when I'm working with someone's important. I mean, there was a study once, it was really wild. They did this thing where like, it was like they had this expertise, like this really top therapist. And the idea was he was seeing his clients, you know, he or she was seeing their clients, and they got really good results, like, you know, pain-free, they were fine, move on. And then they would get less experienced people to come in and do the exact same treatment on the same people with the same issues, and they wouldn't get anywhere near the same results. And a lot of that, you know, there's many variables in that, but one of the variables is most likely how comfortable the person is while they're working with that person.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's crazy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because you know that as a Pilates teacher, you know, when you're starting out, or any skill, regardless if you're 20 years in something else and you start something different, you're normally like a bit self-doubty, or you're thinking about something, and that just comes across in your demeanor, doesn't it, on whatever level. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just how it is, isn't it? Where someone who's done something a million times, they're just a bit more blasé, and you can kind of feel it, can't you? And I think that can really help down-regulate someone's pain symptoms if they're around someone who just isn't too reactive. They're just kind of chilled and they're doing their thing, and not in like an arrogant way, but just in a calm, like, I know what I'm doing, I guess, manner, if that makes sense. And I think you can't really fake that, but I think that's definitely the goal, isn't it? Is you want to get to that level of competence, which is very technical as well, and I guess that is very much experience driven. But then I think that can also improve like your bedside manner, so to speak, as well, with how you speak to people and how you interact with people.
So that's like one of the fundamental things that I teach, or try to get across to my teacher students, and is our energy. And I mean, energy is kind of a, you know, cliche word, but like literally the energy that we put off. One of the have you ever seen one of those energy sticks that you like put your, okay. Yes. So I use that as an example a lot to show teachers the power of that our body literally is an energy conductor. And so I had no idea that there was a study like this. Do you have any idea what, like where it was? Or I would love to look it up.
Oh, I could definitely send you some stuff. I mean, there was one study that was bizarre. I'm a bit paraphrasing, but there was one that was wild, where it was like, it was a fake study. So what they did, it was a real study, but they were lying to the participants. So the participants were given this like tin-foiled hat, and they put this hat on, and next to it, the hat was like, have you heard about this one? They're connected to a machine. Okay, so I'll give you the cliff notes. So basically, these participants with this cliff foil hat. The hat is like connected to a machine, and they can see that it's connected. And then next to the machine, there's this dial from like 1 to 10. And it's brilliant. So basically, the researchers come in, they got their like suits on, you know, they're very smart, got all these participants, and they tell them very seriously, this is a pain machine, and if I turn this dial up, it's going to give you head pain. So 10 out of 10, like head pain, like go to 10, or like 1 out of 10, that kind of thing. The purpose of this study is for you to tell us how much pain you feel relative to the dial. So they start the experiment, and they can see this was it too. They could see that the researcher, the person that was turning the dial, really thought it was also a pain machine. So they were being tricked as well. So anyway, they start turning the dial, and immediately people start complaining of head pain. All right. And the whole thing's a sham. This is a tinfoil hat. The dial does nothing. but the idea is like, you know, you've got someone with a suit on with some authority, they're in a different environment, they've got this head garment on, and you're creating all these like environmental stimuli, I suppose, a way of putting it, to I guess almost manipulate someone into having an experience, whether it's negative or positive. And they found that just to be wild. But I think that was it. They did two versions of it. So one version was the person with the dial knew that it was fake, and that still caused pain to the people. Okay. And then someone else did another study, same thing, but the person moving the dial thought it was real, and that caused more pain to the participants.
Wow.
And the only variable was they just thought. So it just, and then again, it's kind of like, well, how does that work? I don't really know. Maybe it's something to do with your mirror neurons. Maybe it is much more energetic. I'm sure that's a huge part of it that we just don't know enough about it yet. But we definitely know there is a relationship between the thoughts in your head, how you feel, and then how you can make other people feel. It's cool, isn't it? It's crazy.
It's amazing. And I'm so glad that there's research about it now.
Yeah, I'll ping it over to you. I'll find it and bring it over. Yeah.
That would be amazing. And thank you. Tell me more about mirror neurons then. If it's not, if we don't know really that it's like energy, I heard of mirror neurons. I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, it's this idea that basically there's parts of the brain that are really kind of specialized for pinging off the environment. So humans are very social creatures. We're one of the few animals that get like stage fright, for example. I've actually had a lot of anxiety in the past with like public speaking, so it's a real thing, and it's very much like, I mean, animals do get it as well, but we're very much wired to ping off our social environment, and there's kind of obvious reasons for that. Obviously, we're very tribal, we rely on each other, and so I think one of the survival mechanisms we have as Homo sapiens is obviously we want to relate to people. And so, you know, we're gonna, if someone with some authority or some sort of like, you know, familiarity is in an environment, and they're acting a certain way, we tend to mirror that to some level. I mean, one thing I read recently, which is wild, just to go into how far we're so socially ingrained. So if you look at like a gorilla, gorillas have mainly black eyes. They don't really have much white around the eyes like humans do. So humans basically have like bull's eyes for eyes. They have a dot and then a color around it and then white. And it's kind of odd that they reckon that maybe very, very primitive humans had mostly black around the eye. And then the question is like, so why did we evolve for like these bull's eyes? And the reason they think why is because, so if I've just got purely black eyes and I'm talking to you, you can't tell where I'm looking. So you can't tell if I'm looking at your forehead or your nose or your chin. You just see like just black eyes. Where if I've got white around the eyes, you can see where I'm tracking. So you can tell if I'm looking over your shoulder or if I'm doing that, but you can still tell I'm looking at you. So it's a way of assessing basically where someone's attention is going. And so there's so much of us that is what has evolved to basically help us socialize better. So maybe people with mainly black eyes back in the day, they just weren't trusted as much. Maybe they were just killed off. And then the ones the white around the eyes, we can trust them more because we can see where their intention is, where they're looking. So I think there's just a big part of us are so wired for, you know, we're not these isolated islands like I think sometimes we think we are. Maybe when we're younger, we think that way more, like I'm this individual and I'm independent and And I think that's partly true, but we're so like from an evolutionary perspective, ingrained socially, you know, there's major parts of the brain that are just, you know, dedicated to that. But even just like, you know, even your eyeballs, even the shape of your eyes and the color of your eyes, that's also meant to represent understanding or represent intention. So we can't really get away from it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then body language. That's another big one. Are you a reader? Do you read a lot of books?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Presence, Amy Cuddy?
No.
Okay, so I highly recommend it. I think it was 2015 she wrote it, but basically it was about, she was the one who did research on power postures, like power poses.
Oh, okay. Like the Wonder Woman pose, that sort of thing.
Right. So yeah, like, you know, you stand like this or Wonder Woman pose. And so obviously that was really fascinating to me, you know, being on the movement, always about movement. And then now there's actual research saying like the way that you hold your body can not only affect your emotions,
Mm.
but other people's emotions.
Mm.
And what's another one I'm reading now? Right now I'm reading What Happened to You. It's Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Perry. I don't know.
Oh, Dr. Perry. I think I know that guy. He did The Brain That Changes Itself.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the stories are about foster children and the way that they were raised, and how just in general, like our social system, school systems, we are so quick to say a child has ADHD, or, to label them.
Yeah.
And he's really shown how the earlier in life you have experiences, connections, or don't have connections, really sets you up for your experience, or how you'll experience things for the rest of your life. Now, obviously, the brain is malleable now, which is amazing, right? I mean, back in 1991, I was in ninth grade and, experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And I remember they used to tell us that once you kill your brain cells, they'll never come back.
Yeah.
That scared me. Like, that kind of like, I probably still did it, but but at least I was like, I'm
challenge accepted.
And so now that we know differently, that's exciting. And that
No, sorry. For me, that's always been the most wild realization, really. Like, I remember no one ever told me this ever, but maybe they did, I don't know. But I just kind of grew up thinking, you're born and you have a certain lot in life, and you have the cards you're dealt, and those are the cards, and that's it, and that's what you do. And so I guess, like, even that the Pilates training, but also the Franklin method later on as well, like, it really blew me away that, you can create change. And if you learn how to create change, you can do that on a regular basis, and it could be change that you actually want. And for me, that was always like wild. And to learn, like, like you said, like neurogenesis, your brain cells, like, you can regrow brain cells, or, even if you have a stroke and there's certain parts of your brain that are totally fried, the brain can reorganize, and then parts of the brain can move around literally, and you can move that arm again, or you can move that leg again. And so I just think for me, it's always been really wild that you can actually create change, and you can create positive change. Because I think, like, especially with people in pain, that can be quite a realization, can't it? Is because, especially if you've been in pain for years and you've tried everything or whatever, the old stories you normally hear from people who have been in a lot of pain, it can be quite a realization when they're able to, when they know they can create their own change. And that's why I've always loved exercise, because even though physical therapy is great too, and there's a place for it, absolutely, it's really cool when someone can facilitate their own positive change. They can do the exercises at home, or what it's like, when you work with someone and you're working on exercise with them, but you're also kind of working on, like, a bit of mindfulness, for lack of a better word, like sensing their body position, or sensing how they're moving their body. And then what's really cool is when that person starts to make those little micro adjustments without you having to say anything.
Yes.
And it's, do you know what I mean? And it's like, so it's really giving them, like, autonomy, isn't it? So they can really start to create their own change. And it becomes more empowering, rather than always relying on that, on that massage, or relying on that whatever. And that's still great. But that was always my big realization, was like, you can create your own change. And that's, like, that's worth pursuing.
Oh yeah. Like that is probably one of the most important things, I think, for clients, is that they understand that they do have control over their own being. But we are there to guide, but definitely they don't need to depend on us. So are you into plants at all? Do you have plants?
I'm a person that was into them. I like plants. I do need more plants in my life.
So I have to show you this really, let me see. So talking about the brain. This is another thing I'm kind of experimenting with like one of my lessons. So, so these are these weird, like, palm tree things that they actually start out like this, okay? Like little. And I got them from so Las Vegas is desert. Okay.
Mhm.
And so when things get down into the ground, like it's hard to pull them out. So I happen to find these, like, they're basically weeds is what they are, in this soft ground. And this kind of stuff, like, it's kind of like meditative for me to like go and look at this stuff. But
Mhm.
so I was able to pull them out. And this one I've had for about probably 5 months. So what I want you to notice is all the really thick ones were the ones that were there when I pulled it out.
Mhm.
But all the little tiny, like, light ones with the hairs,
Yeah.
light ones, those are all brand new.
Right. Okay.
And this is kind of how I envision, like, the brain,
Mhm.
that if, I mean, because are you familiar with Gil Headley? I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
So he likes to, look at nature and then apply it to like the body. And so I think he kind of like inspired me to kind of look at nature differently and how our body is. And anyway, so just, I think getting clients to, especially women who have, which many do, have very poor body image,
Yeah.
whether they've dealt with anorexia or just in general, they just, there's women that I've worked with a handful of women actually who will tell me that they won't even look at their stomach. They won't even touch their stomach. A few of them, so one of the, I specialize in diastasis recti. That's one of the things I specialize in. And they wouldn't even do like an abdominal exercise. So they're just completely ignoring that area because they are in fear of this aesthetic issue, right? Of what's happening in their core. And so I don't know, one of my ideas is like, could we help clients appreciate their bodies for what they are by looking at nature and looking at the fact that, like, nature is not, I mean, whatever perfect is, like perfectly aligned, whatever. I mean, but you look at this stuff, or you just go down the street and look at all the different trees and plants. I mean, that's kind of how people are, right? Like, everybody is different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, the body image issue, it doesn't mean that, diastasis recti is really, like, so much of it is aesthetic. I mean, if it's very severe, it can be a problem, but for the most part, it's, you can have functional separation. Well, actually, Dr. Sinead says don't call it separation, because it's not actually separation of the tissues. It's widening and thinning. But anyway, I can't remember where I was going with that. I think of the autonomy of clients.
Yeah, it's such a hard one, isn't it? Like, I've had experiences, and maybe as a male, it makes me a bit more separate in some ways in regards to, like, I suppose it doesn't have to, but I mean, it's not something I've gone through personally, but yeah, I've had experiences where, like, and this is when I was younger as well, and I maybe didn't fully appreciate the emotional weight to those, to that area, and so I'd have some women who would really break down in the studio or in the clinic. And it really took me by surprise, because I was like, oh, okay, it's like a real problem. And as you say, it was more about the aesthetics.
Yeah.
And it's such a thing, isn't it? Because I suppose, like, I'm no expert on culture, but I suppose, like, we have these, like, cultural expectations or these cultural norms that we try and impose on people. And as you were saying, you go for a walk, even if you go in Las Vegas, you've got mountains around, haven't you? I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, those are mountains. By the way, one of my favorite mountain climbers lives in Las Vegas. He's Alex, the guy who doesn't even use ropes, crazy guy.
Oh, does he live here? Oh, that's right, he does. I watched his documentary.
Yeah. Yeah. So he lives in Las Vegas because you guys have so many mountains.
We do, yeah, we do.
But yeah, I guess if you look at mountains, like, they're not symmetrical. Like, there's no mountain that's the same height as the other one, or they're not even on either side. And even, like, in the pelvis, like, there's loads of research to show that if you get a pelvic girdle, there was one research paper where they had 30 frozen cadavers, pelvic cadavers, and when they put them in, like, a quote unquote neutral position, there was natural bony asymmetrical differences in the bone. So, like, one hip might be higher than the other one. And it's not because of dysfunction, it's just because that, you know, nature is naturally not super symmetrical. And I think like maybe, I don't know if that necessarily helps someone emotionally, but maybe if like maybe if we did a better job at educating people on like, you know, we are nature, we are organic organisms, and we also don't have to have this perfect symmetry in our body, and things do change as we progress through our life, and we don't necessarily have to view that as like a loss, or something to be shameful of. And it's hard because like it's always hard when not talking from experience. I've not had that, but I guess like I've got a lot of women in my life, you know, girlfriend, mom, and my sisters. So I guess like, you know, it's crazy what women go through with regards to labor. Like it is bonkers, in the best way possible. And it's just like, wow, like, you know, probably we did that. Like my sister was a proper athlete, you know, dancer, and she said it was the hardest thing she's ever done was to give birth. And she knows so much about the pelvis. She knows all about the organs that so she's really also in her body. And she said how hard it was, and in a good way, but like it was a real challenge, she was saying. And I guess like it's a shame that like women should have to feel negative or shameful about their body or how they feel in their body after doing probably the best thing you could do, which is to grow someone and then give birth to someone. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of crazy, really, isn't it? Like you've literally created someone and then you're shameful of the body that did that. It's kind of fucked up, basically, isn't it? Like it's crazy. Yeah.
It's very fucked up.
But I'm with you though. Like I'm with you. Like I know everyone's different, but I think like, especially as I'm learning more about nature, like always being near the sea and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think it's trying to appreciate like probably the more aesthetically minded we are, we kind of get away from what we are because it's always here, isn't it? And it's very much like how things should be, and I don't know, like maybe if there was a way where we could just age more gracefully, and it's more of like an honor to even get to that stage in your life where you have this thing rather than it being like a thing you're trying to hide, or, you know. But I guess like one thing on a practical level, I'm just trying to think of a practical thing, like what I mean, there's a difference between body image and body schema. And so, for example, like body schema being like the neurological map of your body, and then obviously body image being more what you and I are talking about. So I think one thing I've done with men and women is if they've got any body issues, especially around the pelvis, you know, it's almost trying to look at it from more of like an anatomical lens and try and have them just at least try and improve a little bit their body schema. And then maybe that can help them along the lines emotionally as well, if that makes sense. Because we're trying to help. I guess it's things like if someone feels weak in their pelvic floor, or especially like I know a lot of females, they can feel like they almost don't trust it anymore because maybe they've got some issues post that and some things aren't working the way they normally are. And so that they almost don't trust it. And that's a huge thing, isn't it? Is trust. I mean, forget about stability if you don't trust that area. So it's very much like, you know, how can you build trust in that area again? And I think in my experience, giving people as evidence-based as you can get, clear, honest conversation about the area. How does this muscle work? How do these bones move? Can you feel that? Let's do that with an exercise. How does that feel? And really getting them into the mechanics of their body, that can help improve their relationship and improve the trust as well, or improve their perception of that area.
Body schema. Is that what you called it?
Body schema. It might be also schema, but body schema. So it's basically and I guess that's the chicken and the egg, you know, like that's what you kind of reminded me of. So if someone doesn't want to even touch that area or let alone do an exercise for like that area, like the abdominals, you know, what that can potentially do is it can start to what we call create a smudging effect in the brain, in the homunculus, in that area. So the part of the brain that represents like, I don't know, the abdomen. If you're not moving the abdomen, if you don't want to think about it, if you don't want to touch it, and then you're avoiding, even physically avoiding that area, that can down-regulate the body schema of that area. And that can even lead to pain, but it can also lead to lack of coordination. And then that can just, you know, proliferate over time. So that can be an issue in itself. I think is like, you know, if you're avoiding an area, you know, it's not just like, oh, I avoid it and that's it. You know, there's actually parts of your brain that change when you avoid an area for so long.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That makes That's such a great point. So it's really it's where the focus is. Here we come back to what we're thinking about, right? In our language. There's another book, Beauty Sick. Renee Engel is the researcher. And she talks about how, I'm pretty sure it's based in the USA. The research was done in the USA, but she did a study on fitness instructors and their language during class. Part of, and they asked the participants questions about how they felt about their body before and afterwards, and not just their body, just in general. And it was function focused language versus appearance focused language. And it was consistent that when the instructors were using language like blast that cellulite and, firm, I don't even use, I don't know, whatever the word, I don't, like, I don't know, make your butt look smaller, whatever, I don't know, whatever people are saying, that those women actually felt so much worse afterwards than when they were function focused, exactly what you were talking about what the strength could do for them, or what, basing it on their life and movement rather than what it looks like. And
that's crazy, isn't it? I mean, and it makes sense. Like, it's funny, like I would probably be the first person years ago to be like, oh, that's so woo woo, and it doesn't matter what you say to people, whatever. But in reality, like, of course, what you say matters. And I think, like, I think one of the big issues is across the whole world, is people don't move enough, or people don't exercise enough. Right. And I think I would personally think one of the issues is because, people don't look forward to it, necessarily. Like if people looked forward to exercise or movement as much as they look forward to that Netflix show or whatever that thing is next, people will probably be more inspired to move. So I think, like, even going back to what we're saying, like the functional stuff is like, with the language thing, it's like we also want to actually inspire people to keep moving, because then they're going to keep moving, and that's so that's a big thing, isn't it? And I think I don't think anyone really gets motivated through shame, and the few that do, it never really leads down a pathway that's going to be fruitful later, does it? Right. And I think, like, going back to the words we use and even our approach to exercise, but maybe being more, I mean, for me, it always comes back to the person's goals. Like, that's the first question I always ask someone, like, why are you here? Like, what are your goals? And then the function stuff comes later, but it always comes back to their goals first, for me anyway. And I think, like, trainers that listen more and then also are mindful of what they say, they tend to have better retention, which is good for them. But it's also good for the community, because then people are more excited to, like, oh, I can't wait to do that class, or I can't wait to see so-and-so, they're such a good teacher. And, those little things, like what you say, actually, like you were saying earlier on, can have a huge effect in the community, but also in how someone feels personally in their body. Because as we know, like, someone doesn't feel good in their pelvis or in their body, that might influence their intimacy with their partner. That influences how they move. We know pain has a big thing with socializing too, like, so not wanting to be so social with people, and how that can have a negative impact. So it's kind of, the domino effect is quite crazy, really, isn't it? And maybe not to have too much responsibility on that trainer, but maybe just have the awareness anyway of, like, you're part of a cog in a wheel, aren't you? And it's important to be aware of what you're doing with people. Big time.
Yeah. One of my, I've recently kind of stepped off of Facebook, in the sense of, like, I used to have my groups there for my students, and I use Kajabi as my platform for my courses. So I've moved on to, like, a community there, because I've, like, genuinely developed it's like a physical, like, anxiety in going into groups, especially Pilates teacher, like, forums.
Yeah.
Oh God. And not only just what they do to each other, but what they say about what their clients, and, like, the complaint, it just, like, I'm getting, like, it just kills me And that's kind of what inspired like what I'm doing, in a sense of like awareness around what you're thinking, even what you're thinking about your clients. So if you're sitting there thinking, what an idiot, why can't they get on the reformer? It's been 10 years, like you're thinking like the things you're thinking will affect. So you don't even have to be saying it.
It's just you, isn't it? It's your demeanor, or it's your aura, or your energy, or it's so real. Like we've all had that experience where like I've had it only a couple of times, but there's some people where they've got such an energy about them. I mean, it's in a positive way, where they walk into the room and it's just like the whole energy just totally changes in the room, and they've not said a word. And I think maybe, I don't know, maybe people do experience this in other jobs, but I think being in our profession, in our industry, you know what it's like when you're in a studio and you've got like maybe like 30 people in there, and maybe some are clients or patients or their teachers. And there is like an energy, isn't there? And it's normally it can be quite frenetic, that energy. But I think if someone, I've noticed a couple of teachers, they come in really calm, and they're just kind of like almost observing and being very present with just the energy in the room, not even trying to change it. They're just like noticing what's going on. And it's really crazy. I mean, I could feel it in my own body when that happens. It's like, whoa, like it just puts you on a different frequency. And I think it's such a gift if you can make people feel comfortable in their physicality, that's such a gift. And I think like, it basically comes back to you, doesn't it? If you're not comfortable in your own physicality, or if you're not, at least somewhat grounded in your own body, it's really hard, I think, to connect with people when you're working with them in that way with body work, because it's a bit false in some ways, isn't it? We've all had that where you're not quite there and you're saying all the right things or you're doing all the right exercises, but something's not quite gelling. And then sometimes, maybe you're not doing all the right exercises, or like Q wasn't quite good, but then you're in your body and it kind of just is going, wow, So it's very abstract, isn't it? It's quite, I think you can teach it. I'm not the one to teach that, but I think you definitely can teach it. But it's so important. I think you're kind of blind if you don't notice it at a certain point, as you go through life. Like, it's so obvious, isn't it? How the energy you walk around with and how you interact with other people.
Yeah. And what you said, I mean, that was spot on, that if you're really just reflecting how you feel about yourself. Like if you're, not kind to other people or thinking negatively about another person, you can always reflect that right back. It's because that's how you're feeling about yourself, definitely. And
I think females do get, I mean, I'm just observing this from the outside, but I've noticed it's hard, isn't it? I guess maybe social media is maybe a good example of that. Like, you see like someone's highlight reel, don't you? And I've got, I've got friends who are having kids and they're getting married, and when I know them personally, like, and then I know all the grey areas, or I know what's really going on. And if I just saw them online, I was doing what they were doing, I would feel terrible about myself. Like, I know some people who they have some pelvic floor stuff going on, or they have some pelvic pain going on anyway. But then they present like they're in the best shape of their life and they're doing this and they're doing that. And maybe they need to do that as a way to handle it. I'm not really sure, but part of me is always like, there's no shame in also being like, I'm actually in good shape, but I'm still feeling some pain, or this is going on. And maybe it would make other people not feel so negative about what they're going through if they're going through that, and then just looking at their phone and seeing people like having 3 kids and they're running around and they're good. And it's a hard one, isn't it? It's a very murky waters, that one. But
that's so great. That's such a good point. That people, it would be refreshing. People have the opportunity to take off the perfection mask and say, hey, it's nope, there's not one and I know exactly what you mean. And I've even had, I know a teacher that has told me, like, she doesn't feel like she can teach until she's solved all her physical problems.
Sure.
A newer teacher has said that to me, and it's, everybody's got their thing,
Yeah, yeah.
That's why, again,
things.
not this perception. Say that again.
Or things, like multiple things. Yeah, yeah, totally.
The many things, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been around really quite authentic, I guess authentic, like people that are straight. So like, I've met so many amazing people, like real experts in their field, like really inspiring people. But for me, they're more inspiring when it's like they want to go for a beer afterwards, or they have like, oh, I don't really feel like it today, or it's not like you've got to be 10 out of 10 all the time. And I remember like one teacher I met once, I wasn't sure what I thought about it initially from almost like a professional perspective, because I just wasn't sure what I thought about it. And I've been thinking about it for a couple of years, but I remember one time this teacher, she's like teaching, and it's like me and a bunch of students. And she said at the very beginning of the day, she's like, you know what? I'm feeling like a 6.5 out of 10 today. And this is what the person she said. And she was like, I'm saying this to you because I'm teaching you movement. The theme of the whole weekend was energy, actually, about energetics. So she was like, I'm just going to be real with you. Like, I'm not going to, I could walk in and be like, let's go, guys. Like, yeah. But she's like, but then that's bullshit energy, or that's just like, it's not, I mean, it's not like, and she wanted to be real. And it was really like, I remember initially I was like, is that professional to be? But then later on, I was like, I kind of get more what she was getting at, I suppose, in that sense, like,
Right.
being real, isn't it, as well? Like, not like, oh, I'm 6.5, so I'm going to teach 6.5, like, but right. I'm still going to do my best, but just so you know, this is where I'm at today. And it's kind of just being more real, isn't it, I suppose, on a level.
Being real. Yeah. And that all of the experts out there, Elizabeth Larkham is?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have an interview with her Thursday. Obviously she wrote the book, Fascia in Motion. She actually was my trainer's trainer. So the one who certified me was certified by her. Mm-hmm. So we have that kind of connection. Anyway, I gave her this like list of bullet points to talk about. And she emailed me back and was like, this list is the word that stuck out was daunting. and it just shows like the realness, like,
yeah,
just because these people have accomplished amazing things doesn't mean that they still deal with, uncertainty.
Yeah.
About, that Elizabeth Larkham would think a question I was asking was daunting when she's got, and it makes me think, oh, okay,
I'll tell you a story. Like, I mean, I remember, so in 2016, it was when I really started. In 2015, I was like traveling a lot, and I was starting to teach more courses. It was the first time I was like kind of invited as a guest teacher to start teaching, and I was like really excited, like really getting into it. And then 2016, I started teaching at some unis, and I made it into this big deal in my head, like, oh, okay, like I'm teaching at universities, I have to like be really professional. I knew like there were people there who I really admired, who were going to listen to what I was going to say, and I got so worked up. I was in America. I got so worked up about it that I went blind, like for about 10 minutes. It was crazy. So basically, I had it didn't happen when I was teaching, thank God. I was in this hallway in America in the school, and I was getting so like worked up about like, got to teach this, got to do that. And I had like a panic attack and literally went blind for like a few minutes. And then I kind of got it back together. I could see again, and I was all good. But I remember thinking, God, if that ever happened on stage, I'd be so terrified or so embarrassed, like, because it's one thing to have a panic attack, but you literally can't see the door. Like, do you know what I mean? Like full on couldn't see anything. And it was a real journey to have to like get over like that, if that makes sense. So like, not putting such a big what would you say, not putting people on such a pedestal, or sure. Also trusting yourself. Do you mean because I remember being so frustrated because I knew all the technical stuff, I knew what I was going to do, but it was all like emotional, really. It was all about like that was the bit that was holding me back, to be honest. And this is a couple of years ago now, and it was but yeah, I remember like just going back to what you were saying about the daunting thing. It's like, you can really do stuff to yourself physiologically just through your perception of relationships or environments. Yeah. And it's really unnecessary. It's super unnecessary. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really is, isn't it? But I mean, it's cool if you can get through it and then it's a story and you can learn from it, and that's awesome. But it's funny, like I've just learned to not take my thoughts that seriously, if that makes sense.
That's so great. Yes. Don't believe everything you think.
No, hell
But
no, Christ.
don't blame
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, definitely not. But it's nice though, isn't it? Like it's really cool. Like you were saying with Elizabeth Larkin, I've had a similar thing. Even just like going to the pub with some people and like, whoa, like you wrote that book, or and they're
Yes,
just like cool people, and you know, and it's
right.
like it helps you realize that everyone's like just these people bobbing around doing stuff, and you
Yeah,
know, some are more dedicated than others, or
right.
you know, you know what I mean? Like, but we're all just people, aren't we? Like doing stuff. So that's,
Yeah,
and I think again, even bring it back to clients too. It's kind of like, you know, it's so brave, really, for someone to admit they've got a problem, and then they're going to, you know, go for a consultation, or even pick up the phone or send that email. And I think that's like, that took me a while to get my head around too, was like, oh, when people come see you, actually, that's like, they might be feeling the way you felt when you had those panic attacks. Like, so it's also like honoring that, isn't it? And like making sure the environment is pretty comforting, and you know, like you were saying, like again, being aware of your thoughts, or it's just all those things, isn't it? Like really honoring that person, like they've come to see you for an hour, like it's really honoring that relationship, isn't it?
yeah,
And also respecting that they've actually made that huge leap, that they've got some issue going on, and they want to make some positive change.
you're right. That is brave. That's a great way of looking at it. And like, you know, highly respecting them, and never blaming the client.
No,
Like, and I
no,
think that's just in life, you know, that's the other thing
yeah.
I teach my teachers is like, we do a lot of personal development,
Cool.
because I think they don't have enough of that when it comes to like teacher trainings,
Yeah, yeah,
that we kind of want to live the way that we're teaching all the time, like with
yeah,
integrity. And you know, that, so if we're not going to ever blame our clients, we're taking 100% responsibility for our actions, for what we're doing. I mean, obviously, you know, I guess it's comes back to not shaming, and just, you know, accepting, and being neutral and helpful, and
Mhm.
helping the clients to be hopeful.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, like, I mean, being okay with referring too. Like, you
Mm,
know, I mean, I've had a bunch of people over the years where, for many reasons, one of them, like, even if I just don't feel like I'm the right person for them, or we're not gelling, or I'm not able to motivate them the right way, or if whatever their problem is just outside my ballpark, I think it's also just being like, you know what, so and so next door, or this person is actually really cool, and I think you should go talk to them. And I think it's also just being okay to then refer to, and I think that can be really positive. I think sometimes we think about referral as professionals as like a failure, or it's something to not do because you lose a client. But I think
mm,
actually it kind of goes back to like respecting the individual, doesn't it? Like, you know, they've come to see you, but maybe you're not that person yet, or
right.
maybe you're not that person, and then you know someone who's better for that person. So you know, I think it's like, you know, I think as a teacher, and maybe this is probably just self-development in general, it's like layers of becoming more comfortable with yourself, isn't it? And
Yeah,
like, and
totally.
being comfortable with like, oh, I don't really know what this issue is, but this person does, and I'm okay referring that to that person. Or
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Or even being comfortable sometimes calling someone out on their BS as well. Like, so some clients actually do
Yes.
need that push too, and I
Yes.
think that's
Good
probably
point.
more emotional intelligence, you know, when someone who responds to the pushy motivation, and who maybe needs a
Right.
bit more of the huggy stuff. And it's just knowing how to balance that, isn't it, a bit? And
That's a
I
great
don't
point.
think you ever get it totally correct, because I've made mistakes for sure
Sure.
sometimes. But
Oh yeah,
we
for
all do,
sure.
don't we? But especially as a male as well, like it's been really interesting working with a lot. I mean, I've worked with females, yeah, like 90% females for like 10 years. So
Right.
it's been really insightful just to interact more in that way, and have women talk about things that maybe I wouldn't really know much about unless I was in this profession. Um, but it's wild what people will tell you once they trust you as well.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
wild. Like, and it's yeah, I think yeah, I think for me, like you were saying, I think you said integrity earlier on. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge, just being
Yeah.
respectful, and you know, and we all, you know, we all have hats, don't we? Like, you know, I put a hat on when I'm at work sometimes, and that hat
Right.
comes off when I go to the pub, or if I'm at home, or I'm watching Netflix. But I think the idea is you're not like a totally different person, are you? Where you're
Yes.
totally fake.
You have a
Um,
base. Yeah, you're always obviously, yeah, your best professional
yeah,
self.
you know, yeah,
But you have this bait, you know, this core, you
yeah,
know, of who you are. And yeah, I mean that, and that's really, I think what, you know, when I was researching Pilates teachers and really what they needed as far as teaching pre and postnatal, the number one thing that kept coming up was they were not confident doing it. They just weren't. They always felt like, you know, like they didn't know enough, or like they just weren't, that type of a thing. But really what it came down to was how comfortable they really were with themselves.
Yeah.
And then obviously the competence piece, you know, working up to it. But so it's past an hour, and I know it's like what, 9:06 now for you. So I just thank you so much for this conversation. This is super fun.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
And is there anything that you would say, just a piece of advice overall for teachers in helping them to develop their comfort, kind of that grounded confidence in teaching?
Yeah, I think I was asked a similar question ages ago. So I think you should do whatever engages you. So you don't get to choose what engages you. So it's similar to music. Like you don't, unless you can develop an ear for jazz and that sort of thing, but in general, like you don't decide, oh, I like that song. It's like the song plays and you either like it or you don't. It kind of engages you in that way or it doesn't. And I think it's the same thing, that's the same thing with education and also teachers. Like you should pay attention to what's engaging you. And then you should follow that. And that's really, I think I've always done that, but that wasn't like a thought in my head. But you know, whether it was Pilates or Franklin method or certain types of physical therapy, I've only ever done stuff that's really engaged me. And I don't really care what everyone else is doing. I mean, I'm interested, but I just think, well, this is really cool. I'm doing this. And I think like a lot of other professionals who I talk to, the ones that maybe seem a bit more maybe frenetic or they're not sure, it's because they're looking at what's popular, or they're looking at what everyone else is doing, or what they should be doing, or you know, a million other things. And I think that's fine, but I just think, well, what do you want to do? And then I think you'll naturally find your people, or you'll find those books you like, or you'll find the clients that you work well with, because you're kind of following that pathway, like almost like that neurological pathway again. You're kind of following that and you're etching that pathway out. So I would just say a sign of success is how engaged you are. And if you're engaged, you're probably doing the right thing. So with regards to like self-development, I just think find the teachers who you resonate with and then just, you know, hang around them.
Love that. I love that. That's super unique. That's super
cool.
No, yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you again so much. This is so fun. Maybe we can do this again another time. This has been super helpful. I can't wait for people to be able to watch it. And yeah, and I'll catch up with you. I probably won't be able to do one of your live trainings unless it's at another time sometime.
I'll think about the change in times, because I know a lot of Americans say that. So I'll think about more friendly American times next time.
That would be so cool. I would love that. I would totally show up. So yeah, have a good rest of your evening. And thank you again. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is really, really fun, Alison. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And yeah, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.